We're joined by Daniel McLeroy of Daniel Defense, and we're talking hog hunting and what guns work and which ones don't. Welcome in, Gun Talk Hunt fans. I'm your host, KJ, and today we've got a great guest. He's actually in studio, surprisingly. I know this is hard to believe, but if you are on the airwaves and you're sitting there listening, you're going to want to tune in to the more visual aspect of this podcast because we've got some pretties on the table that you're not going to want to miss from Daniel Defense. But that being said, today's sponsors, we are brought to you by Silencer Central, Silence Delivered, and Sig Sauer. They make a lot of cool stuff, so go check them out. Okay, we're joined by Mr. Daniel MC Leroy. That I was told that was his street name. That's your street name, right?
Yeah, MC Leroy is the street name. McLeroy for most general purpose.
Right. So on the street, if you're ever out and about and you see him at a PRS match, make sure you give him a shout out. But that's kind of your game. You're an engineer by trade, but by passion, you're a PRS god.
I don't know if I'd use the term god, but I'm a shooter, right? I make my living being an engineer for Daniel Defense, and any opportunity I have, I'm out on the range pulling triggers.
Well, that's what you want to do, like, right? So you're smart enough to be an engineer, but you're not smart enough to not spend all your money on PRS stuff.
Yeah, don't tell the wife, but yeah.
Please do not listen to this, Miss MC Leroy. Yeah. Please don't. She won't listen to it, right?
She will, actually.
Oh, crap.
It's all right.
Well, my best to you.
Everything here is extremely affordable. You know, couple $100 here or there.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a pretty basic setup.
Yeah.
If you like really accurate rifles.
Absolutely.
And if you are listening over the airways, please go look at the visual because we are talking today. We're going to talk a little bit about hog hunting. These are not snake guns. These are long reach out and touch you guns. But we're talking about the Delta 5, and what we've got in front of us is the 16-inch version in 308, which I think is super cool and very applicable for you know, especially the hog hunting crowd, the whitetail deer hunter crowd. This isn't, you know, we talk a lot about like there's a revival in the backcountry, like it's like the backcountry rifles, and this wouldn't be that.
No, this is not your sheep rifle, right?
No.
Like you're going to get winded, you know, after, you know, a mile in.
Yeah.
But that's not the typical hunting that a lot of people do. A lot of times it's out of a blind or, you know, out of a
field edge.
Yeah, field edge.
I mean, this guy, like, so I've got a field. They don't let me hunt it anymore. Which I'm super disappointed in. Like, you know, those hunting spots where it's like, if I want to take Daniel out and I want him to see 40 to 50 deer a night, and probably shoot one, like this is the field.
Well, not at night. If we saw 40 to 50 pigs
not at
night.
night.
Yeah.
No, pigs at night. Oh, it's game over. But it's not it's a deer field. And this is where I see like this short package doing really well at, and this one happens to be set up. You could hunt this with deer or hogs. Easy. I mean, you've got a Steiner. We'll talk about that. We got a Steiner up there. It's super slow. Yeah,
in Georgia we call them our honey holes, right?
Yeah.
It's you don't let anybody hunt it, but if you know you got a new shooter or you really want to, you got a good buddy that's coming into town and you want to put them on some meat.
Yeah.
You know, you take them to the honey hole. Like this particular rifle, we set out on the edge of a field. In a elevated blind, and you know, 600 yards is in, everything's
toast.
Yeah,
it's on. Basically, what he's saying is it's on the table, and that's when what you're counting your chickens before the eggs hatch. When I do that, like typically, man, it's like, nope, I'm gonna miss that shot 100% of the time. And I know the guys out there, guys and gals out there, they're saying the same thing. Like, oh, you just put bad juju on yourself next hunting trip. That's my daily life. But no, like hunting field edges and stuff is probably one of my favorite ways to do it. And a rifle like this is, I mean, it's perfect for it. I mean, you've got a bipod up front. And I mean, the adjustable stock in itself, and right now we're talking about the Delta 5. This is the Pro?
Yes, Delta 5 Pro. Yeah, and really, like, you know, the 26 and 24 inch barrels, they have their place. you know, you're going to get more muzzle velocity out of those. But trying to get in and out of a blind quietly is not going to happen. Actually, this one, I do a lot of hunting out of like the center of a pivot, which I guess for non-rednecks, it's an agricultural pivot, a sprinkler system for your field that's, you know, above ground, you know, 15 feet in the air. The center of it's a big pyramid.
Yeah.
And that pyramid, the horizontal stabilizers for it are about the perfect height. And I actually think that's where they set the height for the PRS barricade is they measured that because it's perfect.
No kidding.
So you can just throw a little game changer bag up there and you're sitting in this pivot, and especially for hogs at night, you have 360 degrees or, you know, depending on your field, but you've got just a phenomenal vantage point to where you can detect early, you can get on them, range, and then, I mean, it's lights out.
Yeah. Well, and what makes this rifle ideal, especially for a night, is you've got that arc lock rail like already dovetailed into that forend, which I would probably say on this rifle, it might be like maybe 5th or 6th on the level of like things people will notice, but the guys in the know that understand what they can do with that,
they're going to utilize the crap out of it.
Oh my gosh. You get
lock it into a tripod and it's money,
right?
You know,
that's what I'm talking about, is because you can quick detach so many things off that, whether it's a bag. I mean, like you were talking about the game changer bag. I mean, you get that locked in there and you can move it around and adjust it to your blind.
Yeah, absolutely. We spend a lot of time, you know, before it gets dark, and then this is, you know, private land, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You set up either like streamers for yardage, or you put hot hands out there, and, you know, you run speed drop, which is just a come up for your scope, and you go, okay, you know, the dog's moving, and dog is in coyote. I'm not shooting domestic.
Yeah, no.
But dog's moving from this direction to this direction. You just do your come up and let it fly. It's the coolest. I mean, it's the only superpower you can buy, right? Thermal and night vision.
Thermal and night vision. So you make an interesting point, because I've never heard of anybody else doing it. And I'm not the one who invented this or anything, but running streamers. Mm-hmm. But that's the first time I've ever heard running like hot hands. Mm-hmm. That's the first time I've heard that for your night vision. So how will you run those? I mean, you'll run them 100 yards out, you'll put one, 50 yards out, put one.
I don't really mess with it until I get to 200.
Okay.
Just because of the, you know, the ballistics of the round and everything. But at 200 yards, I put a hot hand. At 300 yards, I put 2 hot hands vertically. So they're about 2 feet apart.
Okay.
So I have 2 hot spots, you know, 400, basically every 100-yard increment.
Yeah.
And then when I see that heat signature moving across, your depth of focus, you have to kind of get used to with when you're running it, because you're, you know, staring at a screen. Essentially. But it's just a quick way of like, if I have time to laze it, I will. Yeah. But a lot of times dogs are moving, right?
Oh yeah.
So, okay, that gives me a safe bet. I know I'm within this, and the animal's this tall, I'm going to have an ethical shot on it. So it's just a quick way. It's a cheater way. Right?
No, it's not a cheater way. It's prepping and making the most ethical shot possible. Because I've seen it a lot of times, is what happens is especially when you get into a group of hunters and you're sitting there and you're like, okay, like all of a sudden sometimes rules go out the window. Mm-hmm. Like, and you get in that adrenaline dump and like, oh my gosh, they're right there. Someone has to be the responsible one and understand, like, there's a certain level of preparation you've got to do to make it safe.
And for safety is a big point of it. And I all the time, I have a lot of hunters that like, I would never shoot an animal at 600 yards. That's not ethical. Well, if I can put, you know, 10 out of 10 rounds at 600 yards on a 4-inch plate, what's unethical about that?
Yeah. Well, okay. Now I've got to play devil's advocate to this, because I've seen many times, like, they think they're comfortable with that 600-yard shot, but maybe they are on the range. Mm-hmm. But when you all of a sudden start putting someone on a mountain where there's wind, like, that's where my line starts to draw, because man, out to 300 yards, I'm solid. Like, there's not a whole lot of wind that I'm going to have to worry about, unless you're out in Oklahoma, like you've experienced. I've experienced that it's, you know, 40, 50 mile an hour gusts. And then my ranges start shortening up quite a bit.
Well, and I guess I have the advantage of my range is also like where I hunt, right? So it's not like I'm going to the range and then
Right.
taking it to a new location and okay, my yardages are good. No, like I've got a piece of steel hanging out at 600 yards
Yeah.
and a coyote happens to walk in front of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's a whole different thing.
it's a coyote on the range. It just happens to be a farm at that point.
Right. That's okay. You've stumped me on that one, because typically, like, those guys that are like, hold on a second, we're too close.
Right.
We got to back up. Well, wait, why? Like, that's where I'm like, I start to look at that line of like, is this just long range shooting or are we hunting?
Right.
Because in my mind, it's long range shooting at that point when they start slinging lead.
It's knowing your limitations of your system, your ammo, yourself, right? So before I shot a hog at 600 at night, I shot a piece of steel at night.
At night.
So like I'm not gonna push those limits on an animal. I'll push them in training or scenarios, and then I know my limitations. And people will be like, oh well, you're gonna tell me a coyote walks out at 700, you're not gonna take a shot. Well, it's up to the individual, but I'm not.
Right.
Because
a lot of people won't make that call. A lot of people won't sit there and go, well, I did it at 600. Well, just what's a few come ups?
Yeah.
But you didn't practice that.
True.
And that's where, so in Oklahoma, man, I was on the range all the time, shooting long distance, everything. I was very comfortable, and I was shooting longer ranges, like you said, like on the places where I hunt. So I'm very familiar with it. And I've been out of it for a little bit. Like, I'll shoot a couple matches here and there, but that's not hunting.
Right.
Like, to me, and that's not like consistent practice. And so that's where I kind of have to draw that line of like, man, like I'm not doing it as often as I used to. So like my yardages start to shrink the longer I'm away from it.
Yeah. And it's something, it's the same thing as like, is it ethical to take a 50-yard shot after you just got in your climber, went 30 feet up in a tree, you turned around, your heart rate's jacked up, and your reticle's going on and off the deer? Like the 50-yard shot's now unethical, right?
That's a good observation, because I've been there when it was archery, and I'll climb up and I'm tying myself in and dragging my bow up and pack up, and then all of a sudden I set everything down, and I'm sitting there huffing and puffing, and all of a sudden I hear footsteps and I can barely see, and that deer is like 15 yards from me, and I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah. I can't keep a pin on
There's
them.
no way I can keep a pin on that deer. But yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. Well, on the other side of this break, we're going to take Daniel, and we're going to I want to hear some hog hunting stories. Like, I want to hear some night stories, because I've got some good ones. I know he does. So we're going to take a moment to listen to these sponsors. This Gun Talk Hunt is brought to you by Sig Sauer, the Cross. All right. Yes, the Cross is awesome. It's available in 277 Sig Fury, 308, and 6.5 Creedmoor. But I want to know, what do we outfit that Cross with? Well, did you know Sig Sauer makes a full line of optics? Yeah, their Sierra BDX system is pretty cool. The Sierra 6 is what I'm running currently. It talks to my scope, it talks to my ballistics. It feeds me information. There's a little blue dot on there that says this is where you're going to hold at 500 yards, 400 yards, 300 yards. It changes, and it is a great operating system. The Sierra 6 from Sig Sauer. Find it at sigsauer.com. All right, we're back with Daniel McLeroy of Daniel Defense, and we're talking night hog hunting, and I love it. I don't do far as much as I'd want to. But you do, and so let's just touch on. I mean, we got a Steiner set up here. What do you look for in a night optic?
Very first thing is, do I want night vision? Do I want thermal?
Yeah,
right. So thermal is going to be easier to detect because of the contrast.
Nothing hides.
Yeah,
nothing.
Unless the critter's behind a pane of glass, then it just magically disappears. But night vision is just amplifying, that ambient light, giving you a sight picture through it. So I definitely, I have both setups.
Yeah.
I will say that I tend to give, usually when I'm going out, it's with a new shooter, and I'm letting them enjoy the experience of night hunting.
You take the day night vision, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thermal usually ends up with the new guy because
that's so cool.
They can spot with it easier. They can see their critters. They are impressed with the technology. And then, but I'm just so used to it that I prefer, I run a PVS 27.
So basically what you're doing is you're taking a vegetarian out in the woods and you're letting them eat the fillet first.
Yeah.
You don't present them with like ground chuck or something like that. Like, come on, man. Seriously.
And that's probably just because I enjoy. And the other thing is on night vision, like I run a D-ball on the front of mine. So like that's another system that I have to work. Right. So if they're not used, and they're not used to night vision or night hunting for that matter, there's too many buttons now. And let's keep it simple. Like put your screen on, let's get a good contrast, and let's keep it simple. There's no illumination, lasers, all that kind of stuff they have to mess
you definitely
with.
don't want to overwhelm them, especially if they're new. And that's one thing that I notice about, man, if you hand someone a thermal unit, they are, and realistically, it could be one of the worst ones ever made. But man, when they first see a heat signature, they're blown away. Yeah. Like could be anything.
It's their predator now.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Now it's like, oh, I own the night. And that's what I love about night hunting is, man, if you got a thermal, well, and I use it a lot, and I talk about it a lot, is the scouting aspect that you can do. Right. Even preseason deer hunting, like with in the daylight, like that, for me is huge. You can find those bedding areas really easy without bumping deer.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is what's your environment, right? If you're hunting over a field, that might be different than if you're hunting in where you have obstructions with trees and stuff like that, where getting that clear outline of that critter might not be as easy. Right. So thermal might be able to help you a little bit faster.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way to look at it. Have you ever, I guess, what are a couple lessons that you've learned with taking someone new out with thermal? What do they need to adjust for?
First thing is just getting them familiar with the system in the daytime. Yeah. Right.
That's fair.
Don't do it under the light of your cell phone or a flashlight. Like, okay, press this button, do this, no.
What's nuke?
Let them get familiar with it. Let them understand, like, where's the back button, right? Like I mess something up, extra batteries because it might burn them up. Those kind of things, but get them familiar with the system in the daytime, letting them get out if you can, before it's completely dark, let them get set up, what's their shooting position so they can get comfortable in the daylight. Yeah. And then when it goes night, okay, I remember that hay bale is over here. They kind of orient themselves a little bit better. Okay. One of the things you'll notice on new shooters is depth perception is lacking. And I've got a good story if we have time.
Yes, we have time. Roll with it.
But before I forget, the other thing is just don't be a magnification hog. You can kill a lot of stuff at 1x. Oh yeah. 2x, 3x. Like that's why I have an LPVO because 6x is plenty. Oh yeah. If you're not going to be able to get the quality of the picture when you start getting above 10, that kind of stuff. So
starts to pixelate and you start to lose it.
But as far as like depth perception story, me and a coworker actually were out on his farm. We were actually out there for dogs, and we're just looking at deer. We're just looking at them, and it was the first time that he had used thermal, so he's getting used to it. Yeah. This is just the coolest thing since sliced bread, right? And we're down in Savannah, Georgia, which is very close to Florida, right? And all of a sudden he's like, "Hey man, I think I have a cat," and I'm like, "Okay." So I get my gun over there and I point at it, and he's using the laser identifier, and he's like, "That's where it is," and I'm looking at him like, no, that's not it. Oh, and then I see that it's a bobcat. Is what I'm thinking. It's a bobcat. Yeah. And I see the tail, right? Like the tail comes up and it's a long tail. And I'm like, we got a puma, No. And I'm like, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, can we legally I don't memorize the hunting rules on pumas. And I'm like, well, I'm not taking my gun off this thing, right? Like, and he's looking, and I'm looking, and it's you can see it's shoulder blades going up and down as it's approaching us.
Oh, it's coming in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
were you running a call?
No.
Oh my gosh.
But we didn't shower, so we smelled bad. Yeah. But this thing's coming in. You see the shoulder blades going up and down. You see that tail, and we're just like, man, this thing's gonna come at us, right? And finally, was like, hold on, come off glass. We get out, we hit the laser on it again, and we think that it's 400 yards out.
Right.
We look at it, it's like 25 yards out, and it's a house cat. And, and it's just like a depth perception message because you got this huge image of this puma that's just ready to pounce. And it's a little tabby.
You shot Fluffy.
Yeah, no,
they didn't shoot it.
We didn't shoot it.
Oh my gosh! What would I would have paid money to be like a gnat in that field watching all this go down, and that cat just come up and brush up against your leg.
Yeah.
Kill it, get it off me. Oh my gosh. It's a good story, but man, oh my gosh.
It's just reality check, right? Come out of your glass and see what you can see.
Get back on it and understand, like, hold on a second. What are we dealing with here?
Yeah.
Goodness, that's a good one. I like that one. We're going to jump in here and we're going to listen to these sponsors real quick. Silencer Central. Did you just buy a 4570 that has a threaded barrel? Well, if you did, Silencer Central has you covered with the Banish 46, a few adapters, and now you've got yourself a can on that new 4570. And best of all, Silencer Central makes it easy because they deliver it to your house. You do your photo, you do your fingerprints, you do your paperwork. They manage the trust for the life of the trust. They make it easy. And with new e-forms, they're under 90 days. They're around 90 days. It's a lot shorter than a year. So if you want to learn more, silencercentral.com. All right, we're back with Mr. Daniel McLeroy. And okay, let's talk about caliber selection, because we know with the Delta 5 Pro 308, it's available in a 6mm Creedmoor and 6.5 Creedmoor.
Correct.
But we also, again, if you're listening over the airwaves, I feel sorry for you, but we do have visual representation on the table. So when you go to the YouTube or the Facebooks and you start looking at stuff, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, they're really showing firearms on there. But we have an R3 in front of us. Yeah. Let's talk about caliber selection. Is a 5.56 223, is that enough for hogs?
I will say that I have...
You're going to say disclaimer. Let me tell you something.
Well, I have successfully harvested hogs with 5.56, right?
Right.
Again, it comes into range, proficiency of your system, your ammo, and yourself. But I was shooting I believe it was either a 62 or a 70. No, it might have been a 70 grain Barnes TSX.
Okay.
Solid copper. Right. I put it right in the spinal column. It drops right there. I'm not saying go out there with 55 grain ball ammo.
Right.
Like the construction of the projectile is important. Right. And that's really what 5.56 does, is it makes the bullet construction more important, more critical to the ethical side of things. And, there's some people like, oh, you can kill a deer with a 22 long rifle.
Well, yeah, you can.
Yeah. But that's...
Your percentages are going down a lot.
Right.
Like there's not that bullet construction. And you're right. It is about bullet construction, understanding your system, and being able to put shots on target. Yeah,
but at the same point, let's say we have either a new shooter, a young shooter, or just a small frame shooter.
Yeah.
And they can shoot an AR-15 extremely well. When I mean, accurate shots. Yeah. And they're comfortable with that system. I'd rather them shoot that than a heavy 308 bolt gun that they're uncomfortable with because they're recoil sensitive. Their upper body strength doesn't let them manipulate the firearm where they need to. I'd rather them shoot the AR anytime.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's a good point. We were out. It's a actually funny story. We were out coyote hunting, and I was shooting a 204, and I gave my buddy a 22 250. Both out of like a TC Venture bolt action rifle, and I was using good ammo. But all of a sudden here come the hogs, and I didn't prep him before this. And that's a good thing to remember. Like, he was a new hunter. Prep them for what they can expect when things might happen. Mm-hmm. He didn't understand what I meant, like, by hurry, move, get down on the gun, like stuff. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he sees me running ahead of him, and I'm jumping in the prone, and I start slinging lead at these hogs. 204. So a 204 Ruger knocked down a 150-pound hog.
Yeah.
But that was I had time to prepare for that shot, and I put it right in the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would I take that shot again? I would, because I could shoot that gun really well.
Right.
But would I have most people take that? Nope.
Well, and you might have limiting opportunities, right? If it's quartered away, right?
That's a good point.
If it's not in profile, if it's heading dead straight at you, I have no problem sending one right at a hog's face with the 308 if it's coming straight at me. 5.56, I'm going to wait for it to turn.
Yes.
Right. So now if it charges me, that's another thing. It now becomes self-defense.
Now it's anywhere's allowed.
But the thing is I'm going to be more cautious, and I'm going to try and have a better shot.
Yeah.
I'm going to, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes that animal never does quarter the right way, or never gives you an opportunity for a shot. So is it limiting? Yes, in some ways, in the fact that you might not have an available shot that you could have taken with a bigger caliber. But again, like, if you shoot it well, I have no hesitation in sending someone.
If you've got a good shot, like if you wait and you're patient enough with a good shot, I mean, you're going to make it because you're comfortable with the platform. You're comfortable with the gun. Give us a real quick rundown of the R3. Let's talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah,
it's slick. It's pretty. She hits all the right notes.
If you don't mind, I'd like to.
Okay, you can handle it.
Well, if I don't, I'll forget something, and then the marketing department.
There is a chamber flag in this gun, so it's clear.
It is a clear firearm. So at heart, it's still 70-75 upper and lower receiver. Mm-hmm. Biggest difference there is ambi controls, not just in the selector, but in bolt catch and bolt release, as well as mag release.
So that's big, because when you're trading off guns and like letting a left-handed shooter, I mean. It's smooth. It's flawless transition. Yeah.
Not just from a lefties, but sometimes, like, if you have thick gloves on, getting the mag release, might not be easy to do with this hand because it's shielded, so you don't accidentally drop your mag. Well, on the left side, I've got a little lip that I can get.
You got a lift. Okay.
So it gives you just another option to operate the system. So the ambidextrous is a big part there. The other thing is the RIII III rail. So we're known for our RIII II rail. Mm-hmm. And basically it's actually the same exact bolt-up plate.
Okay.
So if you have an R2 or RIII II, sorry, you can put on an R3 without taking off your bolt-up plate. So that's a nice feature.
Yeah.
But it's an M-LOK M-LOK RIII II. It still is a two-piece constructed rail, so you can drop the bottom rail off and put your 203 grenade launcher if you happen to have one.
Well, of course. Who doesn't need that for hogs? I mean, come on.
But it's an extremely comfortable rail. It's actually one of my favorites from an ergonomic standpoint.
Okay.
It just fits real well. But it's a solid bolt-up system. Like, the rail is not going to move.
No.
If it can handle the recoil of a 203, it can handle a drop out of the pickup truck.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an extremely robust system.
Did you hear stories or something of me dropping guns out of a truck?
Not yet. But
they're there.
I'm sure we will later.
They're there.
So depending on the model, it's a 16 or a 14.5 pinned, or we have the Mark 18 versions, some other barrel lengths. But the R3 basically is the RIII III rail, which is just a bulletproof design that now offers some M-LOK compatibility, and the ambidextrous controls.
Oh yeah,
is the big feature here.
Well, in the buttstock, and the grip is a little bit like you've got a little rubberized texture to it, and I love that.
We've had this furniture for a couple years now. It's extremely comfortable. One of the big things was the guy that designed the furniture actually has a larger beard than I do.
Oh, really?
And it was
okay for all you guys listening. It's about like 4 or 5 inches and really thick. Just visual description for you.
Yeah. But he wanted to make sure it didn't pinch his beard hair when he was shooting.
Really?
Or changing things.
So that's why. So he basically made this for himself.
Yeah, he's a shooter. Right?
What a selfish guy.
The pistol grip's a little bit more vertical angle. It is not a vertical grip by any means, but it's just more comfortable ergonomically than the old A2.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But It's and it has an integrated trigger guard, so you don't have to buy one more piece.
Oversized trigger guard too. I mean, like you could definitely fit some thick gloves in there. So if you're up north or something, don't worry about that.
Yeah. Also, this is, we shoot a lot of ARs at work, obviously, and not that I don't get excited about ARs that we come out with, because everyone has its virtue. But this one is like when we went out and did some product testing. I kept wanting to shoot this gun. It just wants to be ran hard.
Really?
And the more you run it, the better it gets. And it's just like, it's begging to be mag dump after mag dump.
Well, that's what we like out of our guns. And we're headed out to the range to shoot both of these. I can't wait to get my hands on them, honestly. And I've been diving probably more like deeper, into the long range game than I probably need to. And I just noticed it. Area 419 brake on
muzzle
it?
brake, yeah.
Yeah.
So all the Delta 5 Pros will come with a Area 419 Hellfire brake. It's a great little like self-timing system.
Oh yeah.
So and then if you have a suppressor, they make mounts that go in the back of your suppressors that can fit onto the same mount. So it's a very versatile system. It did phenomenal in our testing of recoil reduction, but it's also in muzzle climb. So it's about how many mils did the gun jump up when we were shooting, and it keeps you on target.
Really?
So that's a big reason why we went with that.
Well, that's a big. I mean, for you shooters, man, if you want something that I mean, it's starting to eliminate some jump in that gun and some recoil. That the Hellfire brakes are phenomenal because you go to PRS matches. Mm-hmm. I mean, what percentage would you say is running a Hellfire?
I mean, 75%.
I mean,
maybe it's
okay. These guys want to see that trace leave that gun.
Yeah,
and there's a big reason for that.
That's a big thing for hunting too, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so I held just behind the shoulder and I broke the shot, and if I can see that impact, or hopefully not, I can see dust kick up from behind or underneath or something like that. You now know, did I wound an animal? Do I got a good hit on the animal? Like people talk about hearing the thud. Well, what if you can see the thud?
Yeah, that's even bigger. Like, because that confirmation is everything. And honestly, especially if you're doing night hunting, I mean, you want to be able to stay on that hog or that critter or that coyote. So it's a big plus. I'm excited to get these out. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. All right, Gun Talk Hunt fans, we're going to be back next week, and always, never forget. Keep those muzzles pointed in a safe direction, and always be on the hunt.